Hi, this next reading is by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and the name of the article is The Case for Reparations. And just as the word sounds like repair, its meaning is making of amends for wrong that was done by helping those who have been wronged. You've been studying the history, and you have seen the history of African Americans. And some people say that they weren't really treated and supported the way they should have been, not only during slavery, but even afterward. Before we get started, you need to first, as the instructions state, annotate the highlighted vocabulary, okay? You'll find the vocabulary and its definitions at the very end of the article. Only annotate those words that we will be reading for question 1, okay? And so you'll see that I've already annotated mine, and so you'll only annotate for question 1. And after you've done that, meet me back here, and we'll get started with our reading. All right, you've got your annotations all set? Then let's go. You'll need that highlighter, but before you do, let's go ahead and take a look at the question so we know what it is we're looking for as we highlight, okay? Question 1. Provide details to support Coates's claim. In the 1920s, Jim Crow Mississippi was, in all facets of society, a kleptocracy. And you remember kleptocracy from your annotations. It's rulers. Ocracy is to rule, and klepto is to steal. So, rulers who steal. The state's regime, or ruling entity, partnered robbery of the franchise, and as your annotations state, franchise is the right to vote, with robbery of the purse. I keep my money in my purse, so apparently the ruling folks in Mississippi were stealing people's right to vote and people's money. Now, we'll go ahead and highlight where we see the state of Mississippi stealing from people in terms of their right to vote and their money. Let's get started. And read with me. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of racist housing policy. Until we reckon with our compounding moral debts, America will never be whole. So this is his intro, that we need to reckon with these debts, wrongdoing, and that's why he makes a case for reparations. All right, let's keep going. Section 1. So that's just one of my losses. Let's see, somebody lost something. Let's see if we can find out what it is. Clyde Ross was born in 1923, the 7th of 13 children, near Clarksdale, Mississippi, the home of the blues. Ross's parents owned and farmed a 40-acre tract of land, flush with cows, hogs, and mules. Ross's mother would drive to Clarksdale to do her shopping in a horse and buggy, in which she invested all the pride one might place in a Cadillac. The family owned another horse with a red coat, which they gave to Clyde. The Ross family wanted for little, save or except that which all black families in the Deep South then desperately desired, the protection of the law. So apparently, Coates is setting us up to let us know that black people in the South were not protected as they should have been under the Constitution's 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. Let's go on. I don't still see anything to highlight yet, but I'm looking. In the 1920s, Jim Crow Mississippi was, in all facets of society, a kleptocracy. Well, that's part of my question. I'm going to look for my highlights. The majority of the people in the state were perpetually or continually robbed of the vote. I am going to highlight that. They're telling me they were robbing of the vote, and let me see if I can see how they were robbed. A hijacking engineered through the trickery of the poll tax. So they say you robbed me of my vote through the poll tax, which is I had to pay a fee to vote. Yep, if I'm poor, probably can't afford it. And the muscle of the lynch mob. And a lynch mob is an unruly crowd that acts as judge, jury, and executioner, meaning they want to kill you. So if you're lynched, you're killed. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that because that really does sound like that is how they rob people of their franchise, of the vote, making me pay and then killing me when I wanted to vote. All right, let's see if we find anything else that's going to help us with that question. Between 1882 and 1968, that's almost 100 years, more black people were lynched in Mississippi than in any other state. Well, yep, that's going to help me with that question. They definitely were robbing me of the vote if they were killing more people in that state than any other. All right, let's continue. Oh, wait a minute. Did I highlight that? More black people between? I want to make that as my proof, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. You and I know what's the best way to keep the in from voting. And that's a quote. Who said that? Blustered Theodore Bilbo. Who's he? A Mississippi senator and a proud Klansman. So he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and he bragged about killing black people to keep them from voting. That does sound like a kleptocracy. I'm not going to highlight that, but that might be, maybe I will highlight just that quote from voting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight that just to know that they want to keep it from voting. And he's a Mississippi senator and proud Klansman. Okay, that kind of supports that question. All right, let's go to our next paragraph and see if we can highlight some more to answer that question. The state's regime partnered robbery of the franchise, the vote, with robbery of the purse. Many of Mississippi's black farmers lived in debt peonage. Debt peonage is what? A system where an employer compels a worker to pay off a debt with work. Debt peonage. Under the sway of cotton kings, who were at once their landlords, their employers, and their primary merchants. So these people have all the control. That's how they're able to keep me in debt. Tools and necessities were advanced. So they would give you the tools and the things you needed in advance against the return on the crop. So once you grow your food or whatever you're growing, I guess it's cotton here, then you would have to pay for those tools and necessities once you get your cotton crop in. Sounds good, right? Which was determined by the employer. Now that's where it gets a little bit sticky. Everything's determined by the employer. Who's to say how much crop I have to give them? When farmers were deemed to be in debt, and they often were, the negative balance was then carried over to the next season. A man or woman who protested this arrangement did so at the risk of grave injury or even death. So they'd even kill you if you tried to say, hey, you're taking more of my crop than you should be. Refusing to work meant arrest under vagrancy laws. Vagrancy laws meant it was illegal to be homeless or jobless. So if you don't have a job, you're going to jail. And forced labor under the state's penal system. And a penal system is the punishment system of prisons. So once you go to prison because you don't have a job, they make you work there for free. That does sound like a kleptocracy to me. I think I want to highlight some things here because that definitely is describing stealing from me. I'm going to go ahead when a farmer deemed in debt, went to the next season. That means you stayed in debt forever. And so you had to work for your employer forever and never get out of debt. Okay. Sounds pretty bad to me. All right. Let's see if we can pick up the next paragraph and see if there's something else that can show me how the state stole from the people. When Clyde Ross was still a child, Mississippi authorities claimed his father owed $3,000 in back taxes. Claimed. Ooh, claimed? Makes me think, was it true? The elder Ross could not read. He did not have a lawyer. He did not know anyone at the local courthouse. He could not expect the police to be impartial or not take sides. Effectively, the Ross family had no way to contest or to say, no, this is not true. They had no way to contest the claim and no protection under the law. The authorities seized or took the land. They seized the buggy. They took the cows, hogs, and mules, and so for the upkeep of separate but equal, the entire Ross family was reduced to sharecropping. And what's sharecropping? It replaced slavery in the South. Farmers rents the land for a share of the crop produced, but as we described above, up here, the farmer is never out of debt. I don't care how much you produce, you'll never produce enough to be out of debt. Because who's controlling it? Your employer. He controls all the numbers. And a lot of times you don't read. They didn't teach you how to read in slavery. So now I'm really seeing how this is definitely a kleptocracy. I'm going to go ahead and those back taxes, they stole these people's land. And I'm just going to go right ahead to the authority seized the land, took away their way of life, their way of making a living. All right, let's go to the next paragraph. This was hardly unusual. So they did it not only to Clyde's family, but to a lot of black folks. In 2001, the Associated Press published a 3-part investigation into the theft of black-owned land, stretching back to the antebellum period, that period before the Civil War. The series documented some 406 victims and 24,000 acres of land valued at tens of millions of dollars. The land was taken through means ranging from legal chicanery or trickery to terrorism. I'm going to highlight all this land that was taken from black people because that does show me a kleptocracy. Some of the land taken from black families has become a country club in Virginia. The AP reported, as well as oil fields in Mississippi. Lord have mercy, that is definitely a kleptocracy if you took black people's land that had oil on it. Ooh. And a baseball spring training facility in Florida. So they were doing this not only in Mississippi, but all over the place, all over the South. All right, let's go to the next paragraph. Clyde Ross was a smart child. His teacher thought he should attend a more challenging school. There was very little support for educating black people in Mississippi. But Julius Rosenwald, a part owner of Sears Roebuck, had begun an ambitious effort to build schools for black children throughout the South. Ross's teacher believed he should attend the local Rosenwald school. It was too far for Ross to walk and get back in time to work in the fields. Local white children had a school bus. Clyde Ross did not, and thus lost the chance to better his education. I'm going to highlight that because I think that's also stealing. And I would say maybe stealing from the purse, because if you're better educated, oftentimes you can get better jobs, better paying jobs. Okay? All right, last paragraph. The losses mounted. As sharecroppers, the Ross family saw their wages treated as the landlord's slush fund, like little spending money. Landlords were supposed to split the profits from the cotton fields with sharecroppers, but bales or big bundles of cotton would often disappear during the count. That sounds like theft to me. Or the split might be altered on a whim. Okay. If cotton was selling for 50 cents a pound, the Ross family might get 15 cents or only 5. That's stealing too. All right. Use your highlights and in your own words, answer question number 1.